The WNBA
What's going on, guys?
offseason
It's
was
your boy
supposed
John
to
the
be
Liquidator
loud,
coming back
fast,
with a
and
major
full of
story. So
movement.
it looked like
Big
we
names
got
changing
some
teams,
ground shaking,
rookies finding their homes, fans counting down the days until tip-off. Instead, the entire league just slammed into a wall, and most people still don't realize how serious this moment actually is. Because this isn't just about free agency dates shifting around on a calendar. This isn't just about negotiations dragging on behind closed doors. What's happening right now has the potential to quietly disrupt the entire 2024 season before it even begins. And at the center of all this chaos sits one name the league desperately needs to get right: Caitlin Clark. Here's the problem: free agency can't officially start until a new collective bargaining agreement is finalized. And right now, that deal doesn't exist. The previous extension expired. Negotiations are tense, deadlines are tightening, and now reports are confirming that WNBA free agency may not even open until early March. That single delay creates a domino effect that threatens everything downstream: training camp, the draft, expansion plans, and even the opening night of the season itself. On paper, a March free agency doesn't sound catastrophic, but when you zoom out, the timeline becomes dangerously compressed. Teams need time to sign players, players need time to relocate, coaches need time to install systems, rookies need time to adjust. Strip that time away, and what you're left with is a rushed, chaotic start that benefits no one, especially not a league trying to capitalize on unprecedented momentum. And that's what makes this moment so uncomfortable. The WNBA is growing faster than it ever has. Viewership is up, interest is surging, eyes are locked on the incoming rookie class, but growth only works if the foundation is stable. Right now, that foundation is cracking under pressure. What's even more intriguing is how the league's own scheduling decisions may have already tipped its hand. Subtle clues are emerging, patterns that don't feel accidental, and if you're paying close attention, they may be quietly pointing toward where the league expects its next superstar to land before a single draft ball is drawn. The clock is ticking, the margin for error is shrinking, and what happens next could define not just this season, but the trajectory of the WNBA for years to come. Here where the real tension begins. Behind all the speculation, tweets, and recycled headlines sits one hard truth the league can't escape. Without a finalized collective bargaining agreement, nothing moves. No contracts, no signings, no official free agency. And right now, that agreement is still unsigned. The previous CBA extension expired without resolution, and that single failure quietly pushed the entire league into limbo. The Players' Union submitted its proposal more than a month ago, asking for changes that would fundamentally reshape the WNBA's financial structure. We're talking about a reported 30% share of league revenue, a dramatically increased salary cap, higher minimum salaries, and a supermax that would reset the ceiling for player earnings. These aren't cosmetic tweaks, they're structural demands. The problem is the silence. As of the latest reports, the league still hasn't formally responded, and in negotiations, silence isn't neutral, it's dangerous. Every day without progress compresses the calendar further. January free agency is already off the table, February is hanging by a thread, and now early March is being floated as the best-case scenario. That's where alarm bells should start ringing. Because free agency doesn't exist in isolation, it's the first domino. Push it back, and everything else shifts with it. Training camp dates become unrealistic. The draft timeline starts overlapping with roster construction. Expansion teams lose clarity. Coaches lose preparation windows. Players lose stability. And here's the part most fans aren't considering yet. The WNBA isn't built to absorb chaos the way larger leagues can. There's less margin for error, fewer roster spots, shorter camps, smaller windows to build chemistry. When things get rushed, mistakes don't just happen, they compound. The league insists there's no appetite for a lockout, and the union has framed its strike authorization as leverage, not intent. That offers some reassurance, but even without a lockout, a delayed agreement still carries consequences. A season can technically happen and still feel broken. What's unfolding right now isn't a public standoff. it's a quiet countdown. Early February has become the unofficial drop-dead date. Miss that, and the league isn't choosing between perfect and imperfect. It's choosing between rushed and reckless. And once you see how tight the rest of the timeline already is, it becomes clear why this delay might be the most dangerous storyline of the entire offseason. If free agency truly slides into early March, the WNBA isn't just behind schedule, it's boxed into a corner. On paper, moving free agency back a few weeks might not sound catastrophic. In reality, it triggers a chain reaction that squeezes every other part of the calendar until something has to give. Under a normal timeline, free agency gives front offices breathing room. Teams evaluate the market, negotiate contracts, adjust strategies, and fill roster gaps before turning their full attention to the draft. That window is essential. Remove it, and general managers are forced into decision-making under pressure with incomplete information and no margin for error. Now imagine this. Free agency opens in early March, and suddenly teams have barely 4 weeks to finalize rosters before training camps are expected to begin in mid to late April. That's not planning, that's triage. Veteran signings, cap management, and role definition all get rushed. Players are signing deals without knowing systems. Coaches are building rotations on the fly. And it doesn't stop there. The WNBA draft is scheduled for April 13. That means front offices would be negotiating with established veterans while simultaneously scouting, ranking, and preparing to select incoming rookies. Those processes normally happen in stages. Here, they're stacked on top of each other. One misread, one rushed decision, and a franchise can derail an entire season before a single tip-off. Expansion only makes it worse. Expansion drafts require careful protection lists, strategic exposure decisions, and long-term thinking. But how do you protect players when free agency hasn't settled? How do you build a new team when half the league doesn't even know who's under contract yet? This is how chaos creeps in, not loudly, but structurally. Compressed timelines don't just stress executives, they affect players directly. Athletes lose time to relocate, adjust, and build chemistry. Rookies walk into unstable environments. Veterans are asked to lead without preparation. Training camp becomes less about installing systems and more about survival. And when teams open the season unprepared, the product on the court suffers. Sloppy execution, miscommunication, injuries, fans notice, even if they don't immediately know why. This is why a March free agency isn't just late, it's disruptive. It turns what should be a methodical offseason into a scramble, and once that scramble begins, there's no easy way to slow it down. Here where the timeline stops being uncomfortable and starts becoming outright dangerous. Even if free agency opens in early March and somehow moves quickly, the calendar that follows is brutally unforgiving. Teams are expected to report to training camp around April 19. That's less than a week after the WNBA draft on April 13. Let that sink in. In practical terms, that means rookies would be drafted, introduced, evaluated, and expected to contribute almost immediately. There's no buffer, no adjustment period, no real onboarding. Coaching staffs barely have time to install terminology, let alone build chemistry. For veterans changing teams, it's even worse. New systems, new teammates, new expectations, all compressed into days instead of weeks. Training camp is supposed to be where identities are built, offenses are installed, defensive schemes are refined, roles are clarified. When that process gets rushed, teams don't just start slow, they start fractured. Miscommunication leads to blown coverages, poor timing leads to turnovers, and fatigue leads to injuries. That's not speculation. That's pattern recognition across every league that's tried to cut corners with preparation. And remember, this year isn't just about returning teams. Expansion drafts are also sitting in the middle of this mess. Expansion teams require careful roster construction. They need time to evaluate available players, build culture, and establish leadership. Squeezing that process between free agency, the college draft, and training camp turns an already difficult task into an almost impossible one. What makes this even riskier is the WNBA's structural reality. Rosters are smaller. Rotation margins are thinner. One bad decision or one poorly timed signing can swing an entire season. There's no luxury of depth to cover mistakes. This is why even league insiders who believe a lockout won't happen are still sounding alarms. You don't need a work stoppage for damage to occur. A rushed offseason can quietly sabotage competitive balance before opening night ever arrives. And that's what makes this moment so critical. The league isn't deciding whether the season will happen. It's deciding what version of the season fans are going to get, and whether it starts with clarity or confusion. Now let's talk about the name sitting at the center of all of this, Caitlin Clark. Because while this CBA chaos affects every team, it hits incoming rookies the hardest. And no rookie in recent WNBA history has arrived with more pressure, expectations, or spotlight than Clark. In a normal offseason, a generational prospect gets time to settle into a new city, time to learn a playbook, time to build chemistry with veterans and understand professional pace. That process is already intense even under perfect conditions. But this isn't perfect. It's compressed, unstable, and unpredictable. If free agency drags into March and training camps open less than a month later, Clark's transition becomes brutally fast. Wherever she lands, she could walk into a locker room that hasn't finalized its roster, a coaching staff still juggling rotations, and teammates who barely know each other's tendencies. That's not an environment designed for success, it's survival mode. And the league knows it. This is where the scheduling clues start to matter. The WNBA doesn't accidentally load certain teams with back-to-backs and national TV exposure. Those decisions are intentional. They're made months in advance, based on expectations about star power and audience demand. And right now, one team stands out more than any other, the Indiana Fever. Leaks suggest the Fever are scheduled for more early back-to-backs than almost anyone else. That's not punishment, it's positioning. The league is preparing for Indiana to be must-watch basketball from day one, and there's only one reason that makes sense. But here's the problem. If the season gets delayed 2 to 3 weeks, that carefully crafted rollout collapses, marketing momentum stalls, fan anticipation cools, and instead of launching Caitlin Clark into the league with precision and stability, she's dropped into chaos. That's the real risk here, not that she won't play, but that her debut won't get the runway it deserves. The WNBA is sitting on a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and whether they stick, the landing depends entirely on how quickly this CBA gets resolved. Here, where things get even more interesting, because while the league hasn't made any official announcements, the schedule is telling a story on its own. And if you know how to read between the lines, it's a loud one. The Indiana Fever aren't just facing a tough schedule, they're facing a strategically aggressive one, more back-to-backs than most teams, early season matchups stacked with high visibility, minimal breathing room out of the gate. That's not something you do to a rebuilding team unless you expect eyeballs, lots of them. The WNBA has never been subtle when it comes to showcasing stars. When the league knows a franchise is about to become a ratings driver, it leans in hard. Prime windows, packed travel stretches, national attention from day one. That's exactly what we're seeing here. And it doesn't stop with Indiana. Teams like the Las Vegas Aces and New York Liberty are opening the season with extended road trips. That's another classic league move. Bring established stars into multiple markets early, pair them against rising storylines, build momentum fast. This isn't random scheduling, it's orchestration. Put those pieces together and a pattern emerges. The league is setting the stage for a massive influx of attention centered around a new face, while surrounding her with proven franchises to maximize engagement. It's a calculated rollout designed to capitalize on unprecedented interest in women's basketball. But here's the catch. All of that planning assumes one thing: stability, a clean off-season, a smooth transition into training camp. If the CBA delay pushes everything deeper into March and April, that house of cards starts wobbling. Back-to-backs become punishing instead of promotional. Travel becomes exhausting instead of exciting, and rookies feel pressure instead of support. That's why this moment matters so much. The schedule isn't just a list of games, it's a blueprint. And right now, that blueprint is built around a future star stepping into the spotlight immediately. Whether that plan succeeds or collapses depends on what happens next. Now here's the part that doesn't get talked about enough, and it might be the most important piece of this entire puzzle. If the season gets pushed back, even by just 2 or 3 weeks, the ripple effects won't be small, they'll be massive. A delayed start doesn't just shift tip-off dates, it compresses everything that comes after it. Practice time shrinks, recovery windows disappear, and preparation turns into survival. For veterans, that's frustrating. For rookies, it's dangerous. A player like Caitlin Clark isn't just walking into the league. She's walking into expectations, media pressure, and a spotlight unlike anything the WNBA has ever seen. The league needs her debut to feel polished, electric, and intentional. But if training camp becomes rushed and chemistry gets skipped, that debut risks feeling chaotic instead of historic. That's not fair to the player, and it's not smart for the league. Think about it, a rookie adjusting to professional speed, learning new systems, building timing with teammates, all of that already takes time. Now imagine doing it while bouncing through back-to-backs, limited practices, and non-stop travel. That's how confidence gets shaken early, not built. And this isn't just about one player. Teams across the league would be forced to make rushed decisions. Rotations would be messy, conditioning would be uneven, early season basketball would look sloppy, and casual fans tuning in for the first time might not stick around. Momentum matters, especially when the league is finally experiencing a surge in attention. The WNBA is standing at a crossroads. On one side is a carefully planned launch into its next era, new stars, bigger audiences, real cultural momentum. On the other is a rushed rollout that risks undercutting everything they've worked for. That's why these CBA talks aren't just negotiations. They're the gatekeeper to how this season will be remembered. Will it be the year the league leveled up, or the year opportunity almost slipped away? And what happens next will decide that. At this point, it's impossible to ignore the bigger picture. All of these moving parts, the delayed free agency, the rushed CBA talks, the aggressive scheduling, aren't isolated problems. They're symptoms of a league trying to manage rapid growth without losing control of the narrative. Because here's the truth, the WNBA isn't just planning a season, it's managing a moment. The league knows it's sitting on unprecedented momentum. Ratings are up, attendance is climbing, media attention is louder than it's ever been, and at the center of that surge is a new generation of stars who don't just play basketball, they move culture. Caitlin Clark represents that shift more than anyone else. So what is the league really trying to do? It's trying to thread the needle between labor stability and maximum exposure. It wants the players to feel empowered, fairly compensated, and respected without disrupting the commercial machine that's finally starting to hum. That's why there's urgency without panic, pressure without lockout threats, deadlines without ultimatums. The scheduling tells you everything. The league is clearly positioning marquee teams and potential breakout franchises to dominate early headlines. It's building storylines before the ball even tips. That only happens when leadership is confident about who the faces of the league will be and where they'll be playing. But that confidence comes with risk. If negotiations drag too long, the league loses control of the rollout. Instead of anticipation, you get anxiety. Instead of hype, you get confusion. And instead of celebrating the arrival of a new era, the conversation shifts to dysfunction and delay. That's the last thing the WNBA wants right now. This is a league trying to grow up fast in real time, trying to fix long-standing structural issues while the spotlight is already on. And that's not easy, progress is messy, negotiations are slow, but the intention is clear. The WNBA isn't stalling, it's bracing. Because once this season starts, whenever that is, there's no going back. The audience will be watching, the critics will be louder, and the expectations will be higher than ever. What happens next doesn't just shape this season. It shapes the future of the league itself. When you strip away the noise, the hot takes, and the endless speculation, what's happening right now in the WNBA is bigger than delayed free agency or a tight calendar. This is a league standing at a crossroads, trying to balance growth, fairness, and timing all at once. On one side, you have players pushing for long-overdue financial respect, a larger revenue share, higher salaries, more control over their careers. None of that is unreasonable. In fact, it's necessary for the league's long-term health. On the other side, you have a league that finally has mainstream momentum and cannot afford a messy rollout at the exact moment casual fans are paying attention. That tension is why everything feels rushed, fragile, and unpredictable. Free agency being pushed to March isn't just a scheduling issue. It creates a domino effect that threatens training camp, roster chemistry, the draft, and even the opening tip of the season. Teams can't plan, coaches can't prepare, players can't settle, and when preparation suffers, the product on the court suffers too. And looming over all of it is Caitlin Clark. Whether officially announced or not, the signs are there. The scheduling patterns, the back-to-backs, the spotlight being quietly positioned. The league is preparing for her arrival in a very specific way, not because she's the only star, but because she's the one capable of bringing a wave of new eyes with her from day one. That's why this moment matters so much. If the WNBA gets this right, it launches a new era with stability, excitement, and momentum that carries through the entire season. If it gets it wrong, the conversation shifts from basketball to chaos, and that's a dangerous place to be when you're trying to grow. A lockout still feels unlikely. Both sides know what's at stake, but a delayed, rushed, or disjointed start, that's very much on the table. The clock is ticking. The pressure is mounting. And the league has very little room for error. One way or another, this season will be remembered, not just for who plays, but for how it begins.